afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another vlog. Mirena Persakis with you this afternoon. Thank you all for tuning in. And today, what I'm going to be talking about is, of course, how to use oil pastels. I'm not going to go into too much detail because that's another vlog for another time. But what I'm actually going to be doing is show you a time lapse of how oil pastels behave on a white background versus a toned background. Now, just in case you're wondering, it really doesn't matter what kind of a toned background you're using. For me personally, I used a warm black background on a piece of paper, which of course I did with acrylics, but you can use any that you want, and depending what emotion or what direction you want to take your portrait in. So what I want you guys to have a look at, of course, is how oil pastels behave on white versus dark. And what you'll start to see is that the pastels actually tend to look a little bit more brighter on a white background, of course, than on a tone. And this is because of the white reflecting that color into our mind, and then we perceive it a lot more brighter. So when you're working with oils, or when you're doing a portrait with oil pastels, I should say, the same principles apply. You need to think about your tones, the hot and the cold, the contours of a face, soft edges and hard edges. Now, the one thing that is challenging with pastels, oil pastels, at least for me, is that you can't, I have challenged to mix the delicate tone of a face that I require with an oil pastel. And so I almost treat the process like a layering process. So for example, I might add my red as a beginning surface, and then I might get this one's a little bit dirty because of my fingers being dirty, but this is a light pink on top to lighten that red, and maybe, just maybe, I might use a white on top of that. So this is, of course, it's practice, and you need to understand how to use them. All I can suggest that if you do want to start to learn how to use an oil pastel is just begin to play with simple subjects at home. But just as a FYI, I do work with them as a layering process. So these are the things that I have to think about when I'm creating a portrait. So if you've got any questions about how to use oil pastels, or what is it that you find the most challenging with an oil pastel, please feel free to comment below. More than happy to share with you all the information that I know. But in the meantime, relax, have a look at these two portraits and let me know what you think. Would love to know what thoughts you have and any questions that you have that could perhaps help you in your daily art practice. Drop. Drop. So what did you guys think? Any questions, thoughts, ideas, perhaps maybe inspired to do something in your own studio? Maybe don't attempt a portrait. Portraits can be a little bit challenging. Maybe start off something simple, just so you start to feel how the oil pastels actually behave and they work. The one thing that I found, just as a quick note, is that they actually tend to melt in my hand and they almost turn like a putty. So when you're then applying it on your piece of paper or whatever medium or background you're using, they almost feel like plasticine and you're pushing plasticine about. So that's quite interesting. The thing that I find with oil pastels is that I can't achieve that same softness, that same delicate oil paint tones that I generally can with oil paint versus an oil pastel. So what I tend to then focus when I actually create a portrait sketch is just to focus on the different fragments, the different sections of the face, and then mark that segment with an oil pastel. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the right tone per se, but I always do think about that. Is it, is it a cold and that particular section of has to be receding back, or is it warm tone and therefore has to come forward? So yeah, those are little nuances, of course, that take place with an oil pastel. But the thing that I absolutely love, of course, is the texture. And I think part of it is that I love how it feels in my hand and that I'm able to push that texture on the piece of paper and achieve something a bit more textural versus when I use a paintbrush or a palette knife, which I guess for me it's the same, because oil paint, I do paint quite thick, and so the oil pastel tends to leave a bit more of a thick texture at the end of a mark that I happen to make. So there you go. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Please remember to also click on that little bell icon to let you know when my next videos are uploaded. And as always, if you guys got questions, let me know. Happy to help and happy to give you as much information as I can to help you in your daily practice. Thank you wholeheartedly for tuning in. I appreciate your support. And as always, remember, you are 1 out of 7 billion. I wish I could make you realize how special that is. So be you, live your authentic visions and life and dreams and goals. Until next time, bye guys.